Good afternoon, welcome. It's stage 4 of the Vuelta España 2008. Running from Cordoba to Puerto Llano today. If you've missed what's happened so far, here's a quick roundup. Daniele Benati took the gold leader's jersey yesterday, having finished second to Tom Bonen in the sprint. But his better overall position means he wears the gold jersey for the first time in his career. Here is the man who had it the previous day, Alejandro Valverde. And he took it off Pipo Pozzato when Liquigas won the team time trial right at the beginning. This man showed what a class of he can be on a slide uphill finish, a classic style finish. Alejandro Valverde very, very confident and extremely happy indeed to take the first real road stage here on the Vuelta España. And then Tom Bonen saying, I was going to sit in the wheel of Daniele Benati because he had such good form yesterday. But Bonen showing what a powerhouse he is. It didn't look like much from in front, but it was nearly a bike length, in fact. Here we are as he comes past Daniele Benati out of the slipstream and powers past him, taking his 13th win of the season. Benati, no answer to that. And everybody else trailing in the wake, including the great Eric Zabel. Bonen taking the victory yesterday. And taking his first stage ever in a Vuelta España. There's the general classification then. Daniele Benati leads Alejandro Valverde from Tom Bonen and Pipo Pozzato in that order. Looking a little further down, there's a whole gaggle of riders from Bouygues Telecom. And Quick Step, that should be actually. You look at the map, they've got it slightly wrong there. Cordoba to Puerto Llano is the stage today. 2 third category climbs, 2 intermediate sprints, 170.3 kilometers to a run. And once again, it's going to be a day that's hot in the saddle. Not quite as hot as it was yesterday, though, approaching nearly 40 degrees as they went to Cordoba, the hottest city in Western Europe. Puerto Llano is an industrial town just outside of Ciudad Real. And this man has been out for a long, long time. Once again, it's the Andalusia squad who have put a man up the road and decided they're going to keep him there. That is Lopez Gil. And he's been on the attack ever since the beginning of the day. He's got a maximum lead of about 8 minutes and 6 seconds. It's coming down once again, but Andalusia Carrasur deciding that they are going to make the very, very most of being in their neck of the woods. And they sent him out again today. An interesting guy, this. We'll talk about him a little later on. He's obviously fairly hot, spraying some of water onto his shoes, keeping his feet cold as they go through the air. They were saying yesterday their feet were absolutely baking. Rides with a very toe-down style, does Lopez Gil, and a very interesting character, as we've said. Further down the road, the peloton are about 7 minutes behind. We have had 2 mountains today so far. The Alto de los Valiares with Resendo taking the points at the top there, 6 points ahead of Martinez, his teammate, Francisco Jose Martinez from Andalusia Carrasur, and then another Martinez, Serafin Martinez from the Jacobo Galicia squad, renamed from Carpin Galicia, by the way. Jacobo Galicia, the Spanish rider, Serafin Martinez Acevedo taking the 2 points there ahead of Pedraza. Walter Pedraza, you will remember him from a few years back. He rode for Cel Italia. He is a Colombian riding for the Tinkoff team, getting 1 point on that Alto de los Valiares. Moving on then to, that was only less than 7 kilometers from the start, so Resendo getting out there as quickly as he can to put more points on the board for his challenge for the mountains classification. So another good day so far for Andalusia Carrasur. Puerto de la Chimora was the second climb of the day after 47 kilometers. Lopez Gil, the man at the head of affairs at the moment, took, of course, the 6 points over the top of that. Then Walter Pedraza, the Colombian, from Tinkoff, taking 4 points. Rosendo, and then Ortega, who was out all day yesterday, Manuel Ortega from Andalusia Carasur. So they've really dominated getting points and bonuses so far today. Still sprints to come. We're about 70 kilometers or so from the end. I wonder whether he's getting a... He's got a slightly uncomfortable shoe there, or maybe he's got a sting or something similar, because he sprayed some water on that left shoe, and he's obviously not very comfortable with it at the moment. Another long, hot, dry day today. The temperature not quite as high as it was yesterday. It's in the 30s, 33, something like that, but not anywhere near the 40 degrees that they were suffering from yesterday. I think everybody suffered from the heat yesterday. That's the roundup then in the moment. Let's just let you know who's in what jersey. We know Benati is in the gold leaders jersey. Alejandro Valverde is in the blue points jersey. Rosendo in the pink mountains jersey. And Igor Martinez, another Martinez, in the white combined jersey from Euskaltel Escari. We have been from Cordoba to Puertollano once before. It was Alessandro Petacchi who took the sprint victory back in 2005 then. But we have been to Puertollano twice in the history of the Vuelta a España. The other time was from Jaén in 2007, where Leonardo Duque, the Colombian runner for Cofidis, took the honors on that day. So it's a sprint finish historically into Puertollano. It's pretty flat, and it's one of those industrial centers we visit in Spain. Not the most inspiring of vistas to look at, but it offers opportunities for the sprint victory. Sean, another difficult day in the saddle. It gets pretty hot out here. When you were riding this event, and you've ridden the Tour of Spain many times, won it back in 1988, what were your feelings about these long days, long straight roads?
Well, certainly something you do not look forward to if you're going for the general classement, because you know, they're long, boring days, and you just want to get through them, because you know, it's just so difficult out there when you get a rider, as we've seen here today once again, and we have seen yesterday. Just to leave them get out there and leave them take 8-10 minutes and just leave them cook slowly out there, and the bunch just rolls along, and you know, depending on who's race leader, they control the race, and then just close it down at the end. And many sprinters teams as well takes it up, and you just want to get through, because it's very uninteresting for a race leader in those days, because there's something you can do. If you're going for the general classment, you can't certainly go into the attack or try to really try anything in those days. So it's just play the waiting game, get through those days, and get through them, saving as much energy as possible until we come to the final important part of the race for the general classment men. Of course, that is the time trial tomorrow. So the race leaders in the teams, the team leaders, general classment men, are just getting through those days, stay out of danger, of course, and you know, conserve energy as much as possible.
Yeah, it's going to be one of those days, isn't it? Ciudad Real tomorrow is where the time trial will be. 42.5 kilometers, very flat, and it will be when the big contenders at least try and show their hand, or even conceal it, in fact. But it's a very important day for the overall contenders, and it comes very early in this year's Vuelta a España, the time trial.
Yes, it certainly does. You know, it's much earlier than I think previous years, and it can be a problem for some of the riders who maybe need a bit more time to get settled into the event, general classement riders. So this one could you know, catch out some of the men who would be expecting to be up there in this time trial, lose a bit more time than they normally would, and that's something you really have to be careful with. And you know, these long days as well, when you're going along, you know, the way you ride the stage as well, to make sure you keep, you know, keep concentrating. That's one thing, because as we've seen, and many times when you ride along at an easier pace, a lot of the time we can see some crashes and riders coming out very badly from it. So that's something you always have to be aware of, and just be on the watch out for. And it is so difficult in the long days to you know, have concentration on all the time for almost 4.5 hours, especially when it's going easy. And a lot of the riders, as we can see and we have seen, they have a chat for each other when you ride along slowly, and that is the dangerous point. And also, you know, to keep your gears low, not to start rolling along in a big gear, which is very important for time training as well. You keep the cadence pretty high when you're rolling on at a slow pace.
Yes, mentioning the crashes that you can have if you just sort of lose concentration. Ricardo Serrano from Tinkoff got caught up in a crash yesterday. He didn't start this morning due to that injuries from there. We've had a couple of tumbles today. Lloyd Mondori of AG2 Le Mondial and Anthony Geslin of Bouygues Telecom. They've both had a bit of a tumble today, but they're okay. They're back on the bikes. They're in the peloton, and they're just rolling along at the moment with that man out ahead, Lopez Gil. Here he is. We're going to take a short commercial break, and then there'll be the question of the day, and it's about this man here. So get your history books out. Welcome back. And this is exactly what happened when this man hit. Lopez Gil went away on the attack. He looked at the leaving of Andalusia province into Castilla-La Mancha and said, last time for me to attack. He's extremely well known for attacking in Spain. He's a very popular rider. It started off, he's known as the Malagueta, in fact, because he comes from Malaga. And he started racing quite late in his career, did Lopez Gil. He was an amateur for a long, long time. There is Matt Lloyd just having a bit of a stretch. Obviously feeling the heat today, the Ridley rider. When we get a picture back on Lopez Gil, we'll just talk a little bit more about him, and we have a bit of a question for him today. Eurosportcycling@hotmail.fr is the email address if you want questions and comments and want to answer the quick question we're going to pose about him. There's Oscar Freire in the background. Didn't even bother contesting the sprint yesterday, Sean, which was a bit of a surprise, really.
Yes, it was a major surprise to see him there, very much to the rear of that big group of riders as they went into the last, 5 or 7 kilometres and not make any move to get up. I was reading some of the reports. He had to give a very big effort to stay in the main part of the bunch to get over the final climb of the day, and he felt very tired after that and didn't feel that there was any point in contesting the sprint because he felt he was empty. But as a sprinter, normally you hang around the front because they can do it so easily and so much with ease, certainly in the top 15-20 guys, and just wait and see, and you never know what way the sprint goes. But I think Ferreira must have been really tired yesterday not to have a go, stay up front and see what happened that final 2-3 kilometres. Yeah,
very surprising. We've got a few more things to talk about in terms of the sprinters in this race as well as we get further into the race. Here is Lopez Gil then. He was late into the career. He was an amateur for a long time. Didn't turn professional until late in his career. He's known as the Malagueta because he comes from Malaga. And as you can see, lying 164th on the general classification. 10 minutes 40 seconds down. The question is, though, he was a cycling coach working on the track, but he had to supplement that with another income before he turned professional as an amateur rider. And can you name, or can you guess, what he did for a living before he turned as a professional? I think those people who follow Spanish racing will probably know about it. If not, get your Googles out, as they say. That is the question for today. It is Eurosportcycling@hotmail.fr if you want to participate with that, or you want to make any questions and comments. Lots of people telling us the weather is either good or bad where they are. And nice to say, nice for Amy to write back, who wrote in yesterday saying she was watching from Mullingar, and she now says it's back to normal, it's raining. So you put the curse on them there, Sean. It's the Irish commentator's curse. Eurosportcycling@hotmail.fr is the email address if you want to get in contact with us in the booth. As they roll along, just under 7 minutes is the gap at the moment. Guy Davies writing in saying with the announcement of Cervelo, you probably missed this yesterday, Guy, but it's worth saying again. The announcement of Cervelo going off to form their own team. Saxo Bank will need a new bike manufacturer next year. Who is it going to be? It's going to be Specialized. They've signed a deal with Bjarne Riis's recycling organisation, and they will provide the bikes next year for the CSC team, which will become Saxo Bank as their main sponsor. There's no real knowledge of whether CSC itself will stay in cycling, but we never know. Keep your ear to the ground, and we will too. And when we hear the very latest, we'll bring it to you. Bouygues Telecom sitting in the back. Anthony Geslin, one of the riders there, had a tumble today. along with Lloyd Mondory of the AG2R Le Mondial squad. Jean Gadre has just gone past us from AG2R there. And he'll be just sitting in the back waiting for the mountains to come. This man then is the subject of the question today on the board. If you want to send us an email, what did this man do for a living to supplement his income? He did some indoor track coaching as a cyclist, but he was an amateur for a long time, but he did have a particularly notable job to supplement his income. If you know what it is, then eurosportcycling@hotmail.fr. Second time we've been to Puertollano in the whole history of the Vuelta España. The first time was back in 2007. We went from Jaén to Puertollano. Leonardo Duque, the Colombian, winning the sprint there. So that was the last time we went. The first time was with Alessandro Patacchi, winning in 2005. Similar route. In fact, I think it was almost identical route, in fact, from Cordoba to Puertollano. There's just a little bit of a loop that they've missed out in 2005. This is a slightly longer stage today. So back to the sprinting we had yesterday. Mentioning Oscar Freire didn't contest the sprint yesterday. There's some talk, Sean, amongst our Italian colleagues here on the Vuelta España that there seems to be a bit of a rift developing between Pippo Pozzato and Daniele Bernati. Pozzato particularly slow in the lead out yesterday. Bernati not particularly happy with him, and it may have something to do with the fact that Pozzato's leaving next year for Katusha, or that perhaps he doesn't want Bernati in the World's team. Did you notice anything?
It's difficult to see that in the sprint, of course, because you know, you're going at such a high rate in the last number of kilometres, and when the rider takes it up, that final man, the sprint, which was the case for Pozzato yesterday, for Bernati, and it's the riders, I think, you know, they can see that and they notice it, and certainly you know, when you hear Bernati talking, it is very possible that can be a problem. And of course, with a moving team, Pozzato next year, you know, maybe he doesn't want, you know, to give too much exposure to Bernati and you know, the stage victories, but as we know, the Italian team is always a difficult one for the World Championships. Selection, first of all, you know, it's very important for them, and this year more again, because with the World Championships being in Italy in Varese, it's certainly an important rendezvous for the Italian riders to get on the team first of all, and then to be in the race. You know, we've seen it before, they can pull pretty well together, but I think Pozzato is not maybe the easiest rider to work with. We think we've, you know, heard things before that he's not the most easy one to get on with teammates in the teams he've been in the past.
Yeah, selection is the big thing, isn't it? I mean, there's only a certain number of riders that can be selected for the World Championships. Bernati's obviously in great form, but possibly the parkour in Varese is a little bit stiff for him. I don't know, though. He's climbing particularly well here in these shorter, sharper climbs. What do you think for Bernati's chances? I mean, he did get picked last year, for example, and he was a bit annoyed about that.
Yes, of course, the parkour, the circuit in Varese is a very testing one this year, but I think Bernati, you know, he certainly could be in there with a chance. When you look at what he's been doing this season, he didn't take part in the Tour of France, so I think he's finished the season pretty fresh, and this race will, you know, get him really into top shape, in top condition for the World Championships. So I would, you know, see him, you know, possibly doing a very good ride there, and in with a chance maybe of getting a medal. And that's the problem when you have, you know, too many people fighting for these 12 places for the World Championships. And you know, we talked about Bonin yesterday. He said that he was very happy with his stage win, but also the way he got over the climb. You know, thinking of the World Championships, which is one of his main objectives now for this year, the end of the season. So, you know, if Bonin is targeting the World Championships, well, then I can see Bernati certainly being in there with a very good chance also.
Would you pick him?
Yes,
you were Franco Ballerini?
Well, I think you have to look at the full composition of the team, who the other riders are, and we have to look at Bettini also as we go further into this race. Is he going to be in that, you know, really top shape he has been in the past years? So you have to build a team on the basis of, you know, who your leaders are. If your leader's not performing well, maybe you have to go, you know, for a different team selection. So that is something you have to, you know, look at the team on a whole and see what way the, you know, your potential leaders are coming into shape, what way they're working out, and then you decide on the team. But it's going to be, in the next, I suppose, in the next 10 or 12 days, the team will be decided, set in the next 15 days. And I think Benatti definitely, he deserves a place. But you have to look also, he's prepared to work for for other riders in the team. That is something we don't know his mentality when he gets into the national team, because that is a problem. We must remember they're in trade teams all year, and then they go to the World Championships. They have to, the national team. It is a difficult one, and some riders, they have difficulty, working to a tactic on the day.
Yeah, they do. It used to be the Spanish, of course, that used to argue amongst themselves, but they seem to be the most disciplined bunch of the lot at the moment.
Yes, it's amazing the way the Spanish have worked in the past years. We see with Oscar Freire in the World Championships, once again in the Olympic road, as we see the way, they pull very well together. And, so many big names in there in the Olympic road race, for example. The lineup on the Spanish team, it was amazing, like the names they had there, and they all pulled very well together and really, did a magnificent race team-wise. So they've certainly really got it together in the past certainly 5 or 6 years.
There's the gap, 7 minutes. They're just letting him hang there for the moment, with Quickstep on the front and Liquigas with them. Daniele Benatti wearing the gold leaders jersey of this year's Vuelta España at the moment, thanks to his second place yesterday to Tom Bonen in the sprint. Bonen was particularly powerful yesterday, though, Sean, and we saw the head-on shot, and it looked fairly close. When you saw it from over the top, it was a good bike length there.
Yes, it was, and I think when we see the head-on shot, I had the impression that Benatti was coming back at him, but when we see the overhead shot, it was a total different. You could see that Bonen was very strong. I think Bonen was in the very good position, of course, in the wheel of Benatti, and as you talked about Benatti maybe not getting the fast enough lead out from Pozzato, that certainly could have been a problem. And if you had to take it up that little bit earlier for Benatti, well then Bonen is a dangerous one to have in your wheel at any time, and he was certainly powerful in that last 50-80 metres yesterday, and won it quite easily.
It was pretty hot yesterday, more than pretty hot, very hot yesterday, 40 degrees nearly. And Bonen say he was really feeling it. Everybody was really feeling it yesterday. It's slightly less hot today. It's about 32, 33 degrees today out on the bikes, but they're still going to feel it. It's one of the reasons that the Vuelta doesn't hack along at the same sort of pace as many of the other tours, maybe the Giro early in the year. In fact, that slows down sometimes because it can get too cold. But the Tour de France is generally a higher average speed. It's just too hot sometimes in the Vuelta a España. I think a lot of people forget that sometimes, that it is a very hot race, and that reflects in the racing. People say it could be a bit boring, but I mean, I don't agree. I think it's an exceptional race. It is one of the 3 Grand Tours, and it's got its own character. Timothy riding in from Singapore. It's great to see. We got another email actually earlier today from somebody watching in Thailand, so it's great to know that we're going out on Eurosport World, and people are seeing us all around the world. It says it's 10 o'clock in the evening in Singapore on a nice cool night. Admiration for these guys riding around in this sort of heat. There's Paolo Bettini doing the water bottle carrier's job today. He was saying actually that a few years ago you had to get away with 50k to go, but it doesn't seem to be the case anymore. He thought he'd still have a go, but yesterday, trademark bit of Bettini going on the attack. Alexander Kolobnev went with him for a little bit, decided perhaps that wasn't the thing to do and dropped back. Kolobnev, by the way, forgot to sign on this morning. He's been spotted in the peloton, so he's still there, but technically, of course, if you don't sign on, you're not starting, but he did, and he's there. He's got Barredo next to him as Bettini. He doesn't look very happy, Paolo Bettini, at the moment, having a bit of a chat. Seems to have had most of his hair shaved off overnight as well to keep the cool in there. Alberto Contador, the Spaniard, saying that yesterday was exceptionally hot, and if Contador says it's hot, then it really must have been affecting people. Did you prefer it to be warm when you were racing, Sean? Did you like the temperatures you could get in these races? Obviously, the Tour of Spain was at a different time of year until 1995. It was in the spring, but hot races in the southern Mediterranean, how did you deal with those?
Oh la la, hated it. Yeah, certainly suffered, and you know, people would have followed my career and you know, the results, and I think I suffered majorly when it was really, really warm. When it got, you know, over the 35s, had major problems, and you know, it's just a combination of a number of days out there, and you know, the first 2 or 3 days you don't show that suffering, but when you go further into the race, you seem to pay the price because you do not recover as well, and that certainly was a problem for me. And you know, I adjusted quite well to a certain extent, but never really got on top of it. And you know, the Colombian riders and a lot of the Spanish riders can support it so much better. And you know, the other side of it then is when you get the bad conditions, wet, cold conditions, I was able to support that much better. So you know, it's from where, you know, the country you come from, I think, has certainly all to do with it.
Did you find that ability to tolerate bad weather served you well in the early classic Spanish race of the season that you dominated for such a long time, Tour of the Basque Country, because you won it multiple times? It's a hard old race. The weather can be absolutely foul up there, can't it?
Yes, well, certainly. I think, you know, from your childhood, the country that, you know, you're brought up in, that you're reared in, well, you know, the climate there, that I think you can, you know, you can perform better in that sort of climate. And certainly in my case, a lot of the races like the Paris-Nice, the Tour of Pays Basque, a lot of the times would be very bad weather conditions, and I was able to support it very well. Not really that I loved it anyway, but you know, just you get through it and you can support and you can perform, you know, at your best at 100% or very close in the poor weather conditions, the wet, cold conditions. That was for me, and vice versa for the Spaniards and the Colombians, of course. In the real warm weather, when it gets close to 40, they seem to perform better.
We've got a Colombian who's doing some work today, taking points in the 2 climbs of the day. Walter Pedraza, riding for Tinkoff, has taken 4 points at the second climb of the day, the Puerta de la Chimora, and took 1 point at the first climb of the day, the Alto de los Valeares. The first set of points was taken by Rezendo, and the second by Lopez Gil, of course, who is out ahead of everybody else with just under 7 minutes of a lead. They're not really worried about him at the moment. He is well known for attacking. He's well known for taking every opportunity. He was an amateur till very late in his career, turned pro much later on than a lot of people, with great answers from people about what he's been doing for a job to supplement his amateur riding. Here is Lopez Gil, and he's very, very popular. I mean, most people from this area will know him. He's riding for Andalusia Carasur, which means Southern Bank, by the way, Carasur. And Andalusia is the name, obviously, of the province that supports the team. But he's well known for this sort of attack. And here he is, out by himself once again. Some of the most fantastic answers we got. I'll leave you to decide, or just to chuckle amongst yourselves, or consider which ones you believe. Somebody taking a wild guess that he was a bullfighter before he did this. He's small enough for a bullfighter, but I don't think he was a bullfighter. And then 3 other guesses: nightclub doorman, sprinkler installer, and octopus fisherman. So fantastic. So just keep them on going. I'll tell you whether any of those, in fact, are true about Lopez Gil, but I think that's great. We've had somebody writing in, Darren Gill, in fact, from no relation, Gill with a double L, from Birdwell Wheelers in Sheffield, just asking, can the viewers or you name the Italian rider in the rouleur style of Jackie Durand who rode for a Spanish team in the 1990s? I remember him on a stage in the Vuelta weaving from side to side on a climb close to a finish and getting caught by the bunch. It's an abiding memory, but I can't remember who he is. If anybody has any ideas of that, do you have any ideas there was? Italian rider, Spanish team, Jackie Durand style rouleur. Anybody who has any ideas? Write in eurosportcycling@hotmail.fr. What about this man, Sean? Stefan Schumacher. We don't know what he's doing next year. He's still with Gerolstein, of course, till the end of the season. He's a very talented rider. Could he pull something off in the Vuelta? Certainly stage victories are within his grasp.
Yes, and certainly time trial victories.
Absolutely,
from
yeah.
his Tour de France performances, 2 time trial victories there. It's a question of what he's here to prepare for. I think the World Championship is going to be certainly in his mind very strongly to prepare well for that. The circuit this year, a bit more difficult last year than Stuttgart, and something that would suit Schumacher maybe better. And we see his performance last year, did a great performance in the World Championships, and I think he's going to use this to prepare really well for the World Championships. But the time trials are certainly there for the taking, and I think he will definitely give them 100%.
Rolling along then with the rest of the peloton is Stefan Schumacher. Interesting, isn't it? Tom Bonen took his very first stage victory on the Vuelta a España yesterday. You'd have thought he'd taken some before. He's been around 28 now, Tom. Everybody thinks you think of him as a young man, but he's been around for quite a while now, and takes his first victory in the Tour of Spain. No wonder he was pleased. Bernati, the man taking over the gold jersey, though. I don't think Valverde was particularly worried about that. Sights set on bigger things.
Yes, I think sights set on bigger things, but looking at the first sprint today, Bernati was up there going for the time bonifications, and Valverde was third in that sprint after 70 kilometres, a bit more than 70k. So that's a surprising one to see Valverde having a go for the sprint, and maybe he wants to just stay up there and I don't know, the time trial, he just wants to maybe lose as less time as possible before the time trial and maybe take it back once again. But as we've seen Valverde's time trialing, it's still, a little bit of a question mark over it, and it will be interesting to see in this one how we will fare out. And but majorly surprised to see him having a go for that sprint and picking up some little time bonification that were available today in the earlier part in the first sprint of the day.
I'll hang on to it for as long as possible. Here is Lopez Gil. Went away from the gun again. Andalucía done exactly what they need to do, Sean, in the last 2 or 3 days. We're out of Andalucía now. We're in Castilla-La Mancha. They've done what they need to do. The sponsors will be happy with that. And every day we've had somebody up there.
Yes, well, certainly they've got a huge amount of exposure, and by getting out there, they're guaranteed if you get into a break, and certainly as a lone breakaway, you get all the exposure, as we've seen here with once again today with Lopez Gil, and we've seen it in the past days with them. So they're certainly after cashing in on that, but the price you pay maybe later on, that can be very expensive if the riders do not recover in the next couple of days. And when we get to the more difficult part of the Vuelta here, they could start having problems, staying in the group, even staying in the Group Eto on the mountain days. But they have, of course, a number of days. They have the time trial tomorrow, then they have a rest day, so they have that little bit of time where they can recover fully and hopefully be okay for the most difficult stages to come.
Still, the incredible array of potential jobs for Jose Antonio Lopez Gil comes in. Fantastic. We've had double glazing salesman added to that list, and dolphin trainer, which is absolutely fantastic. Once I get 10 or 12, I'll call a halt on it. I'll actually tell you what the answer is towards the end. He did have another job to supplement his income, which he's well known for in Spain. Nice to see the crowds out, Sean. I mean, it's not surprising you don't see them on those big parched plains up towards Cordoba that we saw yesterday, but it's still nice to see them out here on this climb. Running in towards Puerto Llano, the industrial centre outside of Ciudad Real, where we have the time trial tomorrow. 40-odd kilometres, not easy. I tell you what, if the temperatures are going to be like this, or even higher, Sean, it's going to be a tough day for some guys on the time trial. You could easily lose a packet tomorrow if you're not in good shape or not feeling well in that sort of heat. Although it's flat, it could be very hot indeed, and it could cause some problems for certain favourites if they're having a bad day.
Yes, well, certainly if you're having a little bit of an off day and the temperatures are very, very high, it's something where you pay, you pay that extra. Certainly in the warm conditions. Although if the 42 kilometres, it's not a long time out there. I think where you start to suffer in the big heat is when you're out there for the 3-4 hour jobs. In the end, you really start to suffer. So certainly, I'd not be majorly concerned with that tomorrow. But I think the most important thing is if riders are not really into the rhythm of the race so early this time trial, that would be the place where they get caught out.
Welcome back with live pictures here. Stage 4 on the Vuelta a España. My favourite of the 3 Grand Tours. And this man here, Lopez Gil, has been out for pretty much all the day doing his sponsors. Andalusia Carasur, very doing them proud, actually. And then we've run out of Andalusia now into Castilla-La Mancha, and we're heading towards Puerto Llano, the industrial town on the edge of Ciudad Real. More answers coming in about what he's actually done for a living. Somebody said, I think he was a school teacher. He looks like a school teacher anyway. Nope, afraid not. No school teachers. Not for Lopez Gil. We'll give you the answer a little bit later on. Hugh writing in, Hugh Butterworth, in answer to, I think it was Darren Gill's question about which rider was it that was the Rouleur style rider, Italian rider, that was weaving all across the road. He suggests it was Fabio Roschioli, who won up the Huet de la Cati climb. Can't remember what year it was though, but I do remember Hugh was mentioning the second time around we visited that mountain when there were 4, I think there were 3 or 4 sprinters in a breakaway up the road. Eladio Jimenez won the stage, but Frere, Zabel and O'Grady, and there was another, Huzoft was the other one, who were all in the break together. And we arrived at the bottom of the mountain and there were 4 sprinters away from the peloton. Climbing up a mountain. It's one of my abiding memories of the Vuelta a España. It was one of the most bizarre finishes I can remember. They had Eladio Jimenez up ahead and then 4 sprinters trying to get up the mountain first. This, the results of the first climb of the day. 3rd category, Los Filiares, Resendo, and then Francisco Martinez, his teammate. It's 1st and 2nd. And here is the result for the Puerto de la Chimora. Lopez Gil, followed by Resendo, followed by Pedraza, sorry, Walter Pedraza from Tinkoff, then Resendo. So Andalusia Carasur trying to do as much as possible to gain points, keep the jersey for the rest of the day. And they'll finish off then, having left their province with the jersey on their shoulders. Sprint, this is what Sean was talking about just now. Of course, Lopez Gil getting the 6 seconds, but Bennati getting another 4, wanting to stay ahead in the overall leaders classification, with Alejandro Valverde behind him and 2 seconds of a bonus there. So Bennati obviously trying to play for it, keep that jersey for another day. Maybe he doesn't feel quite as confident in the sprint. Who knows? Well, the temperature's slightly better for racing today. Not quite as stiflingly hot as the near 40 degrees it was yesterday, and they've got time to mess about a little bit in the peloton. They just gradually will chop down the lead of Lopez Gil as they move on a little bit. Teammate of these guys here at Liquigas, Leonardo Bertagnoli, taking victory in the Deutschland Tour yesterday in the stage. And in terms of news, couple more transfers to confirm for you. We talked yesterday about Katusha, the Russian team that's based on Tinkoff, Oleg Tinkoff being part of the partnership there. Andrei Schmil is going to be the director sportif, or the manager, the team manager. In fact, was, of course, a great rider himself. Schmil, real tough guy, but then became the Minister of Sport for Moldova, which is his home province. McEwen, Pozzato, Stiegmans, Karpets and Bocharov we talked about yesterday. Just a few more names to add to that. Kenny de Haas of the Top Sport Vlaanderen team. You'll know Stein Vandenberg, who you will have seen on the Eneco Tour, if you're watching, Antonio Colom and Juan Horach all joining the Katusha team for 2009. Kenny de Haas, a lot of people talking about him as a real potential talent for the future, Sean, and you obviously keep a weather eye on what goes on in Belgium. What are your opinions of him?
Yes, well, I think he certainly has a future from what I hear the people talking in Belgium, that you know, he's a very good sprinter. I think, and a bit more than that, maybe, you know, an all-rounder for the northern races, the classic races. Certainly, he looks to have a future there. And I think, you know, from what I talked with other people, he certainly looks to have a future ahead of him. And I think, you know, very important to the team also, the Katusha team. They have a lot of riders there where they will be certainly going for the classic races, semi-classic races, and you know, a good rider certainly for that to have in the team. But it's amazing, you know, the Katusha team, the budget they have got, 15 million, and they also talked, you know, Sastre. They have spoken with Sastre, and that hoping that he might decide to come to the team. And I think I read somewhere in one of the papers today that they have a budget that they could take 2 riders, the style of Sastre or the quality of Sastre, which is amazing.
It's incredible, isn't it? Budget must be, well, we know the budget's enormous. 15 million a year for 2 years is their budget. Plus they're going to have a sort of academy as well to bring on top Russian talent. Whoop, bit of a problem for one of the CSC boys. Back on the bike for Jurgen van Gulen. Oh dear. That's what you get if you get in the wrong gear. And Jurgen van Gulen having a couple of problems, the Belgian. Soon back into it though. Well, we didn't see what happened, but I guess he might have slipped a chain and got it all caught up, or maybe he'd had a new wheel put in, but I can't see his car anywhere. It might be up ahead, just have left him. No real problems for, well, there is the CSC car. No real problems for Van Gulen. He'll get back in. Come over and let's have a look at it, boy, is what the mechanic is saying. I think he must have got caught up in the rear sprockets here. Keep coming with the answers to what Lopez Gil did for a living. Fantastic. Somebody's just told me, was he an undertaker? That's fantastic. Yeah, just to read them back to back is brilliant. The next one I opened was he an undertaker? And the next person says, was he a spin class instructor? Oh, brilliant. You're entertaining us if nobody else. I hope you're entertaining people all around the world. We'll tell you later on. Keep them coming. I'll narrow them down to the best ones later on. 2 people have actually got it right. And I'll reveal all a little later on.
Well, I certainly, I don't know what he was, but a spin class instructor would be a one which, to go on to be a professional bike rider, certainly, you know, would be is a possible one. But yes, you know, a milkman is the one we haven't had, I think, which we've talked about. We've talked about that. I think so. Some good riders were in the beginning milkmen. They went on to have very good careers as cyclists.
Yes,
so.
that was Frans Verbeek.
Yes,
the flying milkman they called him. Yeah,
that's true.
Yeah, in fact, he left, didn't he? He was a professional, decided he wasn't going to make it particularly well, left, became a milkman for 2 years, and then decided that, looking around at him, the quality of the opposition wasn't as good as perhaps he thought it was. Came back, trained super hard, and had the best part of his career after being a milkman. I'd be interested if anybody's got any other riders out there who've done the most bizarre jobs to support their racing career, either as semi-pros or pros, or before they became pros. That would be quite interesting to hear.
I think the one, yes, that's most likely is the one which is a physical one, a physical job, and I would have a guess maybe a goat shepherd or a sheep shepherd down in this area. There's a lot of them, so I would have a go for that one.
Well, interestingly, that was there was, I can't remember which rider it was, but early in the history of the Vuelta a España, one of the really big superstars of, I'll try and find out his name, it was in the 1935 or 36 tour when they first started, who had been a shepherd, had been a goat shepherd, and he was in fact, or goat herd should I say, and he was orphaned I think he lost his father when he was a baby, and he lost his mother when he was 13 or 14. And he spent his life wandering around the southern hills, around this area actually, with his herd of goats, and decided he got so bored by it. By the time he was 18 or 19, he packed his bags up, left his goats to wander around, and went off to Catalonia, ended up in Barcelona, and from there discovered he could race bikes, and he just suddenly became one of the country's leading bike riders, catapulted into a completely different lifestyle. Did very, very well in the opening Vuelta España. I see if I can remember his name. Somebody may well remember it, but that sort of history, of course, is long gone these days. People from the countryside or people from the industrial north here in the Vuelta España, there were lots of riders from factories and so on, steel factories, steelworks, coal mining. Stablinski came from a coal mining background, the former French champion, the lieutenant of Jacques Anquetil, but that sort of background maybe doesn't exist so much these days. Do you think that the sort of class structure or the structure of where cycling comes from has changed these days?
Yes, it certainly has. You know, if you look back at in the past 15, 20 years, I think the background of riders, you're certainly not going to get, you know, people coming from the mining background, like Stablinski, for example. I think it would be very difficult to find. But you know, I can understand in the earlier days, you know, reading back through the records and the riders, you know, the part of the world they come from and the countries they come from, certainly a much greater variety.
Still Lopez Gil on his way. I'm not going to tell you what he is just yet. You have to wait towards the end of the stage today before you find out that. Beginning to be a little bit more rolling now, the countryside. A little bit slightly greener than it was yesterday. Not a lot, but slightly greener. We mentioned Katusha have a huge budget, and they're looking into perhaps signing Carlos Sastre for next year. Sastra's playing an interesting game at the moment. I know he's talking to a couple of other teams as well, and I think he should try and get as much as he can, Sean, out of the situation. He's won the Tour de France, but he is one of the nicest guys in the peloton. It's been a long time coming. You know, a 10th and then an 8th and then a 7th and then a 4th. He's gradually improved, and I think people want him because they know not only is he a winner of a Grand Tour, the Grand Tour, but he's also very consistent.
Yes, certainly consistency is certainly the word, and you know, winning the Tour this year, you know, it's changed the situation, and of course you have to look at with CSC at the moment and Saxo Bank next year, which it will be, the Schleck brothers. It's going to be, you know, maybe a bit difficult for Sastre there to get the full support of the team, because we see that this year it worked very well, but you know, a little bit of a different situation for Sastre now. He has already won it, and he's definitely going to have, you know, another couple of goals and try and win the Tour for another time, and I think that is part of the reason he's not signed up with Rees for the moment, and he's looking at other things, and he's, you know, that is certainly happening at the moment. He's talking in discussion with other teams, and I think you know, it's understandable, because he has to really make the right selection of team. It's not all about, you know, what the salary is going to be. It's also about the structure of the team, and will he have the full support for the races like Tour of France.
What about this young man, Sean? We saw him Paris-Nice this year have a really good go at winning, and he's obviously got massive climbing talent. I think we might see him up towards the front in this year's Vuelta España. He's been almost lurking really for the last few months. Robert Gesink, the Dutchman from Rabobank. Do you think he's got a great future ahead of him? Well,
he certainly shows a lot of promise in the past years. He's coming up all the time, and this year in Paris-Nice, he, you know, showed a little bit more again in the climb, the finish stage to Mont Ventoux. He really, you know, turned on the full gas there, and it was only Evans who was able to just hang in his wheel. So he's certainly, you know, a magnificent climber. Got you know, a great career ahead of him. The big tours is the question. 3 weeks, how will he support that? And I think this is, the first time we're going to have, a look at that and have an idea, have a test there to see what he will do. But certainly, I think for the future, he is, very much a big tour contender because of his climbing ability. Time trial as well, that's something to see in this race. How will he perform in the time trials? That will also be very important, of course, for the future to win a big tour.
Just a little more transfer news. Thomas Röhriger, who won the Tour of Austria, you'll remember this year, rides for Team Elkhaus, is going to Milram. Milram are taking on an awful lot of people. I mean, they've announced they're going to stay with the team until 2010, but they've taken on a lot of riders in the last week, or said they're going to take on a lot of riders from Gerolstein, and now they're taking on Röhriger from Elkhaus.
Yes, certainly taking on a lot of riders, so there has to be a lot of riders going also, and we haven't seen the riders that are actually staying with the team, although we have an idea of a number of them. But certainly, there's going to be a number of riders there who are going to have to move on and find new teams for next year, because there's quite a number since the Tour of France. Actually, they're talking about riders and signing riders, and it's certainly happening over the past number of weeks. Schumacher's another one, who's been talked about of going to Milram. So certainly a lot of change there with the riders.
There is Alejandro Valverde wearing the points jersey for today. It is blue in this year's, just a plain blue in this year's Vuelta España. Sticks out a lot better. Well, maybe not quite as much as the one with the little fishes on a few years ago, but blue for points, sort of dark pink for the mountains jersey, gold for the leaders jersey. It wasn't gold until 1999. Before that, it was a yellow jersey. In its career, it's been a black jersey with a white cross on it. It's been a white jersey with a red cross on it. It's been orange. I think it was orange for a long time, actually, and then finally became a yellow jersey. What colour was it when you were racing, Sean? I can't believe you don't know.
Yellow orange.
Yellow orange. Ladies and gentlemen, this man sitting next to me won the Vuelta España in 1988 and can't remember what colour the jersey was. Well, that's what happens when you get so many different coloured jerseys in your career, I guess. Lopez Gil has been out all day today and doing a fine job. Responses 170.3 kilometers. Let's just look a little ahead then to what we have coming up towards the end of the week. Tomorrow we've talked about the time trial from Ciudad Real, 42.5 kilometers out and back, running to the west and then back into the industrial heart of Ciudad Real. It's not the most inspiring of places to be, but that is where we are. And then a shorter stage from Ciudad Real to Toledo, 150 kilometers in total on Friday, running almost due north. And then after Toledo, it's the whole nature of the Vuelta España will change, Sean, because there's a big transfer running up to the northeast of the country, and we start all over again with a different type of race when we start to reach the mountains. After Toledo, we run to Barbastro, which leads us into the Pyrenees. The stage from Barbastro is to Andorra, so quite a different aspect to the Vuelta España after the run into Toledo at the end of the week.
Yes, well, certainly a big transfer, and of course that runs into the rest day. But the past years, the rest day is taken up with these transfers, and that's something that never happened before. In my time, certainly the rest day was a rest day, and you hadn't to do this major transfer. And it's happening also in the other big races, the Giro and the Tour, certainly. And so you cannot really call it a rest day for the riders, because if you have to get on a plane, and so you're going to take up certainly a good half day to get there. So it takes a little bit away from your total rest. Whereas if you finish in a town the day before the rest day and you stay there, well, then it's much more relaxing. But there is a big transfer here, and we're going to get into the mountains quite quickly when we get towards Andorra.
Thierry Salguin doing the job of water carrier. We see a lot of that in the last couple of days, taking on a lot of fluids. What are they taking on in here, Sean? I mean, I think there's a mixture, isn't there, of electrolyte type drinks and not so much the energy drinks today, but definitely things that keep the essential salts and minerals getting back into the body quickly, and just plain water.
Yes, well, a lot of plain water, and we see the riders there from the Liquigas team. You know, they're just squirting water at each other. That is certainly plain water, and you know, you would have the isotonic drinks, of course, but you know, you'd be taking so much liquids in these very warm conditions that you have to take a lot of water as well. And I think, you know, 60% of the bottles will be water.
A lot of it carried. They're all carried in sort of cooled bags in the back of the car and passed forwards. And so they keep them at a sort of a decent temperature. They can't be, of course, too cool. If they're too cold, then that causes as many problems as it does if they're too hot.
Yes, it does. If you know, really cold drinks, it can be affect the stomach. It can cause a stomach upset. So they have these boxes in the cars, and it keeps it cool, but certainly not ice cold, because that is very dangerous. When the body is so warm, if you take really ice cold drink, well, then it can cause stomach problems. And you know, in these warm conditions as well, the team cars that go to the feeding station, they would have a number of fresh drinks as well. So when they go through the feed station, sometimes the car that's following the team would, you know, get a recharge of fresh drinks of a fridge box, because they're going through so much bottles here. It's difficult to have it all, you know, right from the beginning of the stage to get you through the full day.
Still, well, there's now 3 people who've got the right answer to what this man's part-time job was when he was an amateur rider. But Stu riding in and talking about other riders who've had great jobs. Wim van Est, the first Dutchman to ever wear the yellow jersey in the Tour de France, and probably most famous for the fact that he plunged down a ravine 150 feet and landed on a ledge and was dragged out with a rope of knotted tyres. It was back in the 1950s. If you've ever come across that story, it's a very famous one. It gets trawled up every time there's a Tour de France story of people going over the edge of things. But he worked for Dutch Railways, did Wim van Est, and then Stu tells us that when he finished his racing career, and was he welcomed back as a national hero in Holland? No, he went back and worked on the railways for the rest of his life. So we've mentioned Frans Verbeek was a milkman, and Wim van Est working on the railways. And this man, however, did not work on the railways. Neither was he a milkman. Or, as Maggie has just questioned, was he an embalmer? No, I'm afraid not. Still some time if you want to have any guess. I've had a fantastic list of them so far. They run, just feast your ears on this then. Bullfighter, sprinkler installer, octopus fisherman, nightclub doorman, double glazing salesman, dolphin trainer, school teacher, undertaker, flamenco guitarist, knowledge management consultant, which I think is interesting. My favourite one is, because I'm not really sure which of the 4 he would have been in this particular one, is ABBA tribute band singer. So I'm not quite sure which of the 4 he would have been, but there we go. It's amazing what wigs and makeup can do. One of those is actually correct, would you believe? And 3 people have got it right so far. About 33, 34 degrees now out on the road, and Lopez Gil, who's well known for his attacking nature, has been out again all day. Well, has been out all day. Yesterday it was Ortega, his teammate, who went on the attack, and before that it was Rosendo, who has taken points in the mountains classification. Done a very fine job indeed. Let's get back to the business in hand though today. The run-in today, Sean, not too hard. One tricky corner towards the end, just at about 600 meters, runs into around about a left-hander. Hopefully it should be wide enough for everybody to, well, it will be wide enough for everybody to get around. I can't really see a problem today. Only one slight difficult part. At 3 kilometers out, there's a 180-degree bend. It's a right, left, and then a left almost immediately. Not too bad a run-in. Who do you see going for the victories today?
Well, I think Bonan is certainly going to, you know, have a go once again. He's seen yesterday that he, you know, was the match and better than, but Benatti, and Benatti, of course, he's going to defend for the race leader's jersey. The team is doing that all day, so they're going to try and finish it off in the end. And I think Benatti, we didn't maybe see the best of the sprint yesterday that he can produce because of the circumstances, possibly having to start that sprint just a little bit too early with Bourne in his wheel, and that's always it's always a little bit of a handicap when you have to do that in that final 200 metres. So I can see those two fighting it out again. Ferreira maybe if he's recovered, and we know Ferreira from the past. He doesn't maybe contest the sprint on one day, but the next day comes out and he can produce a great sprint and beat everybody. And he's a very good rider at calculating that. And we've seen him come back from a long layoff of racing, and they've come back and win many races. He's able to calculate how he feels. If he's capable of winning, well then he has a go, and when he does do that, he's certainly capable of winning bunch sprints.
Well, the pace being up by by Quickstep and Liquigas behind have cut down the lead of Lopez Gil to about 3.5 minutes now. From the 8 minutes maximum we had, he seems fairly comfortable to just sit there. He's doing a job. There's always the very slim outside chance that they may decide not to catch him, and away he would have gone right the way to the end. But on a day like today, no chance whatsoever. What about outsiders, Sean? Leonardo Duque has won here before. Pataki, of course, is not here. Pataki now serving a ban for salbutamol taking outside of his therapeutic usage allotment. And what about somebody like Duque? He would be keen to do the double here.
Yes, well, certainly, and he's always there or thereabouts, and difficult for him against the like of Bonin. But I think Napolitano, he's a guy from Lampre who could do it well.
Yes, I was going to ask you about Lampre because they're on the front here today. They're actually they're contributing to pulling this back. We haven't mentioned Napolitano recently. He's a bit on and off actually in terms of consistency, as Pedro Harillo does the water carrier's job. He can be exceptionally fast on his day, but not always the smoothest of sprinters, not always the most graceful of sprinters. I think they call him the Rock Ape or something like that, don't they? He's a great big burly chap, and he has to be absolutely on the top of his game today.
Well, yeah, as they talk in about sprinters, I suppose within the bunch, he would be called, I suppose, a bit of a bulldog, which is the name used a lot when the riders talk, certainly amongst themselves and within the teams. He's a very fast finisher, and on his day, if he get the right positioning and that, he can beat the best. Yesterday the run in, of course, much too difficult for him because when it goes uphill for a number of kilometres, he's in major difficulty immediately, and so yesterday wasn't a day for him, but today I can see him certainly being in there, and you certainly cannot count him out of pulling off a stage victory, and I think against Bone and Benatti, he's the one maybe who certainly has got that sprinting ability, that's that final burst in the last 150 metres. Duque, as you said, thereabouts, but I think to beat the likes of the top sprinters is always going to be difficult for him.
Do you think we're likely to see in this Vuelta a España any sort of situation where Eric Zabel could maybe sneak a win? It's true, we've said it many times now, he doesn't have the zip and the fire that he had several years ago. It's unsurprising, really. I mean, he's not in the twilight, well, he is in the twilight of his career, if you want to say it that way, but he's so consistent. Again, yesterday, really right up there, didn't have the final kick. Surely it's only a matter of time, Sean, we're all ticking down now to a day where he can finally take another win.
Well, yes, he's always there in the shake-up in the last 200 metres, and we see him once again yesterday. Positioning, he seemed to be able to get it, pretty right most of the time, and that's all about experience. But I think he's suffering in that last number of kilometres when it really goes at 100%. He's there, but pretty close to the limit, and that's where you get caught out as you get later in your career, and certainly the position for Zabel in the past number of years. years, and then when you have to make that real burst in the last 200, 150 metres, he's just so much close to being on the limit, he's not able to do it, and he has to just follow the other ones. I can understand the feeling. I went through it myself in the end of my career. It's something, positioning, everything, you can do it so well, but you just haven't got that extra little percent, 2% in the end. It's so difficult, to pull off a victory against the big sprinters.
There's a lot of sprinters here as well who have to play second fiddle. If you think about it, or some anyway. Think of people like Wout Valent, for example. He's got to play second fiddle to Tom Bonen. Valent is not a bad sprinter himself. That must be very hard, Sean, if you you can pick off some of the other guys around you, but you have to play second fiddle so that you're to your main man.
Well, they're in the teams for that. For that reason, they're taking into the team to work for the leaders and to prepare the sprint for a rider. And in that case, for Waylands, it's with Bonen there in the quick step team. He knows that that's the job, and I think the tactic should be, if you have a guy who's really fast in the sprint and possibly capable of winning a stage himself, he will be one of the last men to lead out Bonen in the final meters, take him into that last 150 meters. Sometimes riders start looking at the situation and saying to themselves, well, I can win myself. And if you start doing it a number of times, well, then the team will say, well, that's not your job. You have got to work to the tactic of the team and work for Bonen when the moment is there. But you get your occasions in races during the year. There's certainly times that those riders do races where the big leaders are not, and you get your own chance to play your own card.
Resident of Oudenaarde, Valent, and often on the Schelde run, 9 o'clock in the mornings. Every morning out he goes. Likes to play around with the other guys. Likes to sprint against them for signposts and the like. There's Wout Valent, resplendent in his quick step kit as well. So we are under 40 kilometers to go here on stage 4 of the Vuelta España. Hugh rising back in saying, thank you very much. Fabio Roscioli was the rider I was after. A quick search has informed me he rode for Jazztel Costa del Almeria in 1999. Yeah, you thought he rode for many years with Carrera.
Yes, I think he was with Carrera in for quite a number of years when he was at the best of his career, and he won a stage in the Tour of France, if not more than one. I think into Marseille one year he was in a lone breakaway as well and won alone out in front. So I think yes, that is the rider, but I can't remember him being in a Spanish team in the end of his career. But certainly was a rider who liked to go in the attack a long ways out.
Proper ruler style, Jackie Durand style rider, as Hugh Butterworth was saying. Jackie actually is working on the Volta España this year, along with Patrick Chassé, our colleagues in Eurosport, and Jeff Bernard's here as well. Jeff's back on his bike.
Yes,
Amazingly.
that's true. He's made a comeback and doing quite a lot of biking, and he's one of the riders who took a long time off when he retired. I don't think he did anything for many years, but now back on his bike since sometime this year, and looking the better for it. Certainly he's lost quite a lot of weight, and that's something that riders, when they retire, when you do 12 or 15 years as a bike rider, it's difficult to continue for some to ride your bike, because you've done so many miles and out there every day. It can be a difficult one in the beginning when you retire, and they take a number of years out, and then when you get 2 or 3 years out of riding bike totally, it's difficult to get back.
Did you ever have a period just after your career ended, Sean, where you fell out of love with riding the bike? Did you ever just park it up and say, I don't want to do that again?
No, never really had the problem of saying I didn't want to ride the bike, but it's a total different situation when you finish with professional racing or training, let's call it. Well, you ride your bike 2 or 3 times in the week, and that is sufficient, and that is quite a lot less when you would be competing professional.
Welcome back to stage 4 on the Vuelta España. It's hot today. There's a lot of liquids being taken on board. It's not as hot as it was yesterday, but still a lot of riders having to stock up on that water, as Pichot has a word with the director sportif in the car. I think it's Odriozola, who's the TS he's talking to. This man has been out all day. Lopez Gil of the Andalusia Cajasur squad, and it is time, as they are rapidly gaining on him within about 2.5 minutes, to reveal the nature of his job. Before he became a professional bike rider, he had done some coaching, track coaching, and earned some money that way, but he remained an amateur for very late on. I think he was in his mid to late 20s when he started riding a bike professionally, and he had to supplement his income, and did so by, these are some of the options we were given: deck chair attendant, ABBA tribute band singer, which I think is fantastic, a knowledge management consultant. Brian Palmer said that. I'm not quite sure how on earth you came up with that one, Brian, but shows the strange workings of your mind up in Isla. Flamenco guitarist, undertaker, thanks Kathy for that one, school teacher, dolphin trainer, which is probably one of the most bizarre ones, double glazing salesman, nightclub doorman, octopus fisherman, sprinkler installer, and bullfighter. The real answer is that Juan Antonio Lopez Gil was in fact an octopus fisherman. Well done to those of you who got that. He used to go fishing off a pedalo. He had a pedalo which he sort of go out into the shallows with and jump off the side, collect the octopus, and then come back up again. So that's what he made his money doing. He was an octopus fisherman, although I think he may well have doubled up as an ABBA tribute band in the evening. I think that would be a great thing to do. Thanks for all the entertainment, keeping us giggling with some of that. And thanks for those people who have been writing and saying others, other famous riders' jobs. We did mention Frans Verbeek, who was Frans Verbeek, very interesting character actually. Verbeek trained probably longer and harder than most people in his generation. He was absolutely notorious for training. He'd do a big long race, and then people would be jumping in the car or driving back from at the end of a race to wherever they were going, and they'd see this rider in the distance with a cape on riding back to his home, and it would turn out to be Verbeek, and he'd always put extra hours in because he thought that, you know, that's what made him absolutely a top bike rider. And he was very, very tough, in super shape. Probably wasn't the most naturally gifted of riders in terms of had a super sprint or was a ruler. Was a great roadman though, and just put so much effort in. Was a milkman, gave up for a while, thought he wasn't going to achieve what he wanted to achieve, was a milkman for a couple of years, and then came back, and they did used to call him the Flying Milkman. We did the whole nicknames thing during the Giro d'Italia, which is always quite fun. But he was known as the Flying Milkman, and they came back in a more successful career later on. Actually, I think it was 76 he came back, or something like that. But he was certainly riding later on in his career much more successfully than earlier on. My favourite thing about Frans Verbeek, though, or two things about Frans Verbeek. One, he rode for Watney's Red Barrel, which he had. He had a white jersey with Watney's Red Barrel in the middle, which was, as many of you in the UK will remember, one of the worst beers ever produced. And he went on to form Vermaak, the clothing company. And he's still at the head of the Vermaak clothing company. And did you know he also invented overshoes? Frans Verbeek, the shake of the head there from Sean. Yeah, he was the man who invented the overshoe. So he's an interesting character.
Yes, I did not know that, but I can understand why he invented the overshoes. Coming from Belgium, they certainly need them up there, and they would be a very good market for them. Yes,
exactly, especially if you're going to spend as much time on a bike as he did. Did you ever come across him? I don't think he might have retired in 76 maybe, but do you know Frans at all?
Yes, well I remember him, you know, from the beginning of my career, people talking about him, and I've met him, quite many times, and as you said, he was one of the harder men. Certainly up in Belgium, you have a lot of them, but he was the one who seemed to do a lot of training and extra training after racing. And I suppose it's something that we maybe 20 years ago the riders were doing a lot of, where they would up their training a bit more after some of the semi-classic races, getting ready for the big ones. He was definitely one who did a lot of that in his time as a rider.
Pat writing in from Bristol asking, thanks for the commentaries. Is the comment. The initial question is what's happening to Crédit Agricole next year, or the riders from Crédit Agricole. We've talked a lot about Gelsteiner going, but it's true actually, we haven't talked much about Crédit Agricole next year. It's a great shame, isn't it, because Roger Leger been involved with that team for the best part of 25 years on and off in its various guises. Peugeot, Z Peugeot, then GAN, then Crédit Agricole. It's really been the same sort of structure that's evolved. It's a great shame to see it go, and some of those riders will, or some riders we know have got places for next year, some haven't.
Yes, well, there's some of the riders are going to have difficulty finding a new team, because again, 25, 30 riders in a lot of the teams, and of course, the ones who have got results, who are performing well, who are winning races, it's always a bit easier for those riders to get into teams. But sometimes, domestiques in a team, if you're not taking along with the leader of the team, it can be very difficult to find a new team for the following years. And it's certainly a disappointment to see Leger going, because he's been around for a long time, and have had a good team for many years, and produced some good results. And Hushoft, of course, in the Tour of France, in other races, producing very good performances, and winning green jersey, winning stages. We've heard about some of the riders going, and Renshaw was one of the ones I read today that he's going to Colombia for a lead-out man, of course, for Mark Cavendish, and he's certainly a very good one at that. We've seen him do it this year with Hushoft, and maybe replacing some of the riders who are leaving also from Colombia, and Chiolek, who we've talked about possibly going to Milram. I don't think that's being confirmed yet, but it looks like
it's looking that way, doesn't it?
It looks that way. So certainly, Renshaw would be a great replacement with the Colombia team in that respect, to as the final, or one of the final lead-out men for Cavendish in the big sprints. Nicholas Roach, of course, who was also with Crédit Agricole, who we see put up a very good performance there yesterday in the sprint, and it was funny really to look at it. He found himself in a very good position at 200 metres to go, and I think he got a little bit of a scare or surprise, whatever you could call it. I'm so close here. He didn't know really exactly what to do, but it was a magnificent performance, and finished up, very well in the stage yesterday. He's going to AG2R, of course, and he's had a very good year this year. I think he's upped the ante quite a lot, and won some very nice races this year.
I noticed, by the way, on some of the UK-based cycling forums, that people were getting slightly mistaken about who he's related to. In fact, is Nicholas Roach. Nicholas Roach is Stephen Roach's son. He's Neil Martin's nephew. He's Dan Martin's cousin. So that's the way it all works for that. So yeah, but pretty good yesterday. He looks in really good shape. I think he's beginning to come into the sort of flower of his career, really.
Yes, well, certainly, this year I think he showed, a lot of improvement, and I think he's gaining confidence all the time, and that is something, the riders need a number of years to do that, just to get the confidence, build the confidence within yourself, and that's certainly, I would see it being the case with Roach in the last number of months, or for this year certainly, and see him getting up there in the sprints. It's great to see that, because now hopefully we'll see more of him in this race, because yesterday I think a little bit of an eye-opener for him, that he could get up there and finish up in that very high place with so many great sprinters, and when you do it once, that you say I can have a go at this one, and hopefully we'll see more of that in this tour from him.
Yeah, that's a bit more Neil Martin than Stephen Roach, really, isn't it? Up at the front there, giving it a bit more hard sprinting rather than anything else.
Yes, well, certainly the father wasn't a great sprinter.
Short and to the point. He'll be after you now. Yeah, he will. Let's go back to. Let's just leave that alone while we can. Thor Hushovd. We mentioned him in passing. I do happen to know he is talking to a new team. So we'll keep your ears open. We'll bring you the news whenever we can, and hopefully before anybody else. But I do know he's talking to a new team. So when I say a new team, not a new team for him, I mean a new team. So we shall see how things go. Oscar Freire not partaking in the sprint yesterday, really just not bothered at all, and certainly just cruising along today with around 30 kilometers still to go. Maybe young Rochi could get up again today and have another go. But it looks like it will be the big sprinters today once again. It's that sort of flat running where it could go for powerful guys like Bonen and Benati. Well, Daniele Benati will be up for a crack at taking one back off Tom Bonen today. There he is. Bonen's taken one victory here. Benati's got the gold jersey, but he would like a stage victory. Absolutely for certain. He took one against Tom Bonen in the Eneco Tour recently, but I have to say that Bonen looked by far the more confident and powerful rider in the Eneco Tour, but Benati just maybe lacking a little bit in terms of outright power and horsepower against Bonen. And we shall have to see. They're both in very, very good shape. The danger is, of course, Sean, that they'll be both in very good shape here at the beginning of the Vuelta, and it'll just tip over the top when they get to the World Championships.
Well, of course, you know, both of them has been out for quite a time, and we all know why Bonen was out, not allowed to take part in the Tour of France. Benati, he had an injury problem, and he's been, you know, suffering with that, and he did not take part in the Tour of France. So both, you know, both have had a race during the summer months and not racing as much as they normally would be if they'd taken part in the Tour of France. It would have taken, you know, a lot of effort, and fatigue is the thing at this time of year. If you do the Tour of France, it can be a problem. So they should not have that, and I think you know, this race is going to be a good race for them. They're going to produce, you know, some good results here. I think we'll see both of them pulling off more stage victories, and then later the World Championships, I think, you know, they're going to be, as we talked about, Benati, maybe a little bit more difficult for him selection wise. Will he make the team? But of course Bonen, he's a certainty for the Belgium team, and when we look at his World Championship victory in Madrid, it was a very difficult circuit, maybe not as difficult as Italy this year, but still it was a very testing circuit, and the situation much the same. He did not he crashed out of the Tour on that occasion quite early, so again, you know, he did not have the 3 weeks in the Tour of France of fighting for stage victories, going for the green jersey. So it's a little bit similar this time round. So I think you know, we're going to see some good, more good performance from this one, and also in the World Championships, possibly the two of them up there in the very end.
Yeah, the Madrid circuit, very long, dragging climb, actually much steeper than people gave it credit for, and went on for a long time, and that's where the attacks came in the end. Bonen managing to stay there. They didn't absolutely hammer it time after time after time though, Sean, on the Madrid circuit. Varese a little bit similar, but perhaps got a steeper drag in it. Do you think the pace will be higher this time around? We're bound to see some Belarusians or something go off and go on a long break, and some Venezuelans and the odd Peruvian, but the Italians in their home country will really want to control this completely, not let the Spaniards get anywhere near it.
Yes, and I think you know, in Italy the World Championships is always that little bit extra, and it is something to it in Italy. You know, the support of the Italian supporters down there, that they come out so much in force, and certainly, you know, from all the other countries as well. And I think you get a better race down there, more active certainly in the earlier part, and that will be the case. But in the end, of course, you have to look at the Italians, how they're performing. They're certainly going to be up for it on the day. But the Spaniards, when you look at their team, Freire, depending on how he's performing, if he's at 100%, well then there's no need to make the race difficulty very early, because Freire, if he can stay in there, he can win in the sprint against anybody. But if they're preparing for the likes of Valverde, make it a bit more difficult, and that way you make the sprinters suffer, and hopefully maybe eliminate them out of the leading group. So it depends on the tactics and what way the other big nations, their important men, their top men, are performing.
What about climbers for this year's World's course? Do you think it's slightly too easy for a very good climber to take the crown?
I think yes, it's going to be it's going to be difficult for a like of Contador, for example, a Sastre. They've got to get away on their own, and I don't think it's going to be possible where they can just burden everybody out of their wheel and go it alone. There's always going to be a riders who can sprint better than them will hang in there, and it's something on a circuit. It's always difficult. You haven't got this, of course, a climb of 8 or 9 kilometers where the real climbers need something of that distance. A Schumacher, for example, who's a really strong rider, he can hang in there, and he's another one certainly. If he's in top shape for the Worlds, I think we could see him, as there is many others.
Jean Gadret getting a fresh bidon from Jose Luis Arrieta, the Spanish rider on the AG2R squad, who's doing the job of handing out bidon today for his team. And it looks as though there's a conflagration of world champions for a minute. Was that Oscar Freire having a bit of a chat with Paolo Bettini? He went out a long way yesterday. He does like those long-range attacks, Bettini. It didn't come off for him, but he always keen to have a go.
Well, certainly, and sometimes you question his tactics in the race, because he goes at a moment when it's going to be impossible to go away and hold out there and have a run at the stage, take a stage victory. And when you look at the style of rider he is in the sprints, he is quite fast, and if he just plays the game, wait around a bit, and he could still win in a sprint against some of the better sprinters and some of the top sprinters. Yesterday I think it was just a little test and a little bit of training, maybe in view of World Championships.
Indeed, could well be. Just there we go, 4 hours in the saddle has come up now on the bottom left hand side. 170 kilometers was the stage length today. Tomorrow, 42-kilometer individual time trial at Ciudad Real, and then we move on to 150-kilometer stage into Toledo before a massively long transfer up to the far northeast of Spain to Bestrado, and then a big stage into Andorra, where we'll see some of the real contenders looking at each other and checking each other out as we run into the Pyrenees. So Liquigas, Quick-Step and Lampre doing most of the work today, just to inch down the lead of Juan José López Gil, who is out ahead, has been all day today. The former octopus fisherman and amateur rider who turned professional late in his career and done a super job once again. We've been to Portoleano twice in the history of the Vuelta, once in 2005. Again from Cordoba. On that day it was Alessandro Petacchi who took the lead, took the victory, should I say. And then from Jaén to Portoleano was Leonardo Duque back in 2007. Duque will try and do something again today, but he's got big guns in the form of Bernardi and Bon to contend with. Just a quick mention while we can, for a couple of events going on in the autumn after the World Championships. On Sunday, the 5th of October, if you're in the UK, once again Brian Rourke will be holding a Rourke's Ride up to the Cat and Fiddle and down again from Burslem in aid of cystic fibrosis. And are you going to Rourke's Ride this year? I'm penciled in.
Yes.
Yeah, I missed it last year. The two of us will be there riding. If you'd like to come and join us for such a worthy cause, you get a huge amount of people turn up. And
if I make the fitness test.
Say again?
If I make the fitness test.
If you make the fitness test, well, you know, both of us in that case. But plenty of tea and cake available at the top of the Cat and Fiddle, and always a really good day. Brian Rourke, such a great guy, helped by his partner Judith, and they organise it terrifically well. Rourke's ride from the Brian Rourke shop in Burslem, Stoke-on-Trent, 5th of October, if you've got your diaries out by now. And another one a little after that, the following Sunday, Ibbo's Cake Quest bike ride. If you remember John Ibbotson, the former British pro, who very sadly died of heart failure, despite being a much younger man than me, 2 or 3 years ago. The memorial ride for him, starting from Walton-on-the-Hill Community Centre in Tadworth. And that's starting between 8 and 10 in the morning on Sunday, 12th of October. Ibbo's Cake Quest. He did like a bit of cake, did John. Look at www.johnibbetsonfund.com for entry forms. That's John, JOHNIBBOTSONFUND, johnibbetsonfund.com. Entry fee is 10 quid in advance, 15 on the day, and well worth going to. So there's 2 dates for your diary, 5th of October and 12th of October. Moving on into November, as they go under 20 kilometres to go. November, second weekend in November is the David Rayner Fund dinner. If you haven't got your tickets, I'd make sure you get them now. Look up the Rayner Fund on the internet. That is the 8th of November, just a couple of weekends before that. Here's the Braveheart Fund dinner, 25th, 26th of October. If you haven't got your tickets for that, make sure you do. Fantastic fun. I'll be at the Rayner, and Sean and I will both be at the Braveheart. Always good, and always a worthy cause, because they both of them go to support young riders, Scottish and English, in Europe, and furthering their professional career. Do terrific work. Well, Lamprey deciding to pick up the pace on the front now. Keep it going. They've got a bit between their teeth. They are looking for Napolitano, I would suggest, as you said, Sean, today. And nice to see them at the front. All we've ever seen, well, in the last 2 or 3 days is Liquid Gas and, of course, Quick Step. So nice to see another team doing some work.
Yes, certainly, and I think for Lamprey, important to try and get a victory here on the belt early, because with Napolitano, I'm not sure that he's going to get through the mountain stages. So, you know, when the occasion presents itself, have a go for it. And with him, as we spoke about sometime earlier, you always have, you know, a possibility of putting the stage victory. Inside 20 kilometres at the moment, just over a minute and a half. So it's just a matter of time before we see the leader pull back.
Never going to do anything on general classification. Daniel Napolitano, he could do with it a stage victory. Pulls off a big one now and again. He's certainly not as consistent as some of the other big riders. Had a good day today, this man here, Lopez Gil. As I say, well known for going on these long attacks, but it is a feature of the Vuelta España. Somebody always goes out for a long lone one, and it's got as much to do with the nature of the climate here as anything else. Nobody really wants to expend themselves chasing down everything when they can just let a man go out there and fry. And amazingly, we've seen quite a few spectators on the sides of the road out in the middle of nowhere in the last 2 or 3 days, and not yesterday right in the middle of that scorching plain just before Cordoba, but we have seen quite a few, which is pretty good going for the Vuelta a España. Shaping up to be a real classic duel this year. Alberto Contador bidding to be the man who takes all 3 leaders' jerseys in his career and still riding in the current peloton. The last man to have done that was Bernardino, and that's a long time ago now. And Carlos Sastre looking to follow up his victory in the Tour de France this year with a victory in his home tour. Hasn't won that so far, and once again a consistent rider and having his best year. I wonder if he's got the kick and the fitness to stay with a man like Contador. Well, we shall know when we get to the Pyrenees. Lamprey then pushing on. dragging back the lead of Lopez Gil. At the moment, it is Marco Mazzano doing the work on the front, dragging things back. Any likelihood we'll see somebody clipping off in the last few kilometres, Sean, or are we just going to see them all running together for the sprint today? It would seem more likely today than in the previous 2 days.
Yes, I think certainly it's going to be more difficult to get today. The final kilometres are, pretty flat, and it's always major difficult for anybody to try and escape alone or a small group of riders. There's going to be a number of teams here, keeping the pace very high, and if you have a difficult running where it kicks up for a kilometre or two, that's when sometimes the teams have difficulty keeping the pace very high, and the opportunity for somebody to go on the attack alone is greater. But today I cannot see it. It's definitely going to be one of these big bunch sprints again.
And Bernati and Bonin lining up to do battle, with a couple of others in there as well. Well, they've been in the saddle over 4 hours. At the moment, Bernati leading the overall classification, we said at the beginning of the day, with Alejandro Valverde in the blue points jersey. In the pink, Rosendo, sorry, should I say, of Andalucía Carrefour, and then the white combined jersey is on the shoulders of Igor Martinez. Nice to see a combined jersey. Are you a fan of the combined competition, Sean?
Well, I think it's a good classman to have. It makes maybe a little bit more of active racing as well. If people are in a competition or two, they have to make maybe a move in that and try and get some points and move up in that competition. So it does help maybe a little bit to the racing, to the activity of the racing.
New rear wheel required, and away goes Jean-Marc Moreno. And should get it back in. Okay, they're still not going super fast, but they're certainly picking up the pace at the front with Lampre, Quick-Step, and Liquigas doing the business. Very quick off the mark were the Crédit Agricole mechanics. You can see the peloton just disappearing into the distance, so not so bad. Not panicking, just sticking with it, lifting that back wheel up, doing exactly the right thing, allowing them to get that rear wheel in and get him away very quickly indeed. Ooh, he's a bit close. Blimey, they're obviously not as hot here, Sean, as they were in the Tour de France, the Commissars, because he's right on that bumper.
Yes, certainly getting the good drafting here and just really close. And we did see in the Tour de France, of course, in the earlier days, they were very difficult. And, when riders were having problems, mechanical problems and crashes, they were, really making it difficult for them to get back in. And it's pretty normal that they come back in the cars. And, what we've seen there, it would be pretty standard, just getting back into the line of cars and then the rider work his way up through the group, up through the line of the group of cars and get into the rear of the bunch.
Just 15 kilometers to go then for this man here, Lopez Gil. The gap is being chopped down quite drastically now by a combined effort from Lampre, Liquigas and Quick-Step. They are trying to set it up for the big sprint for their 3 men. Daniele Napolitano, Daniele Bernati and Tom Bonin are their 3 sprint hopes today. Well, there are some other guys who will try and get up there as well. We've already mentioned Leonardo Duque, a victor here back in 2007. We've only been to Puertollano once before. That was in 2005. That was won by the absent Alessandro Petacchi. 15k for the rest of the peloton. At the back is Jean Gadret, the little climber and cyclocross specialist from AG2R, who absolutely flew in the Giro d'Italia 2 or 3 years ago, and everybody went, wow, that's good to see. And then since then has never really recaptured that sort of form. Well, certainly one person we probably won't see doing anything today is Sylvain Chavanel. Tried it yesterday, but they've got Leonardo Duque in the pack in order to give it a go for a sprint. in the Cofidis squad, so I don't think that we'll see Sylvain Chavanel having another go. Maybe we might see some of the Crédit Agricole boys. They've got 2 or 3 particular guys who could have a go, at least. Sebastian Eno could certainly have a go. Jeremy Hunt, although he not seem to be on super form, but he is a very good sprinter in his day. And Nicholas Reich, we were mentioning earlier, he's been in good form. He was right up there the other day. Maybe that'll have given him confidence that he can go on a little further. Juan Jose Heredo of Team CSC Saxo Bank will be another man trying to mix it up today. Don't see an awful lot of Heredo. He was very successful with the Toyota squad in the United States, has come to CSC, never really lived up to the potential he had.
Well, I think he's with probably better company, stronger company here, and it's difficult. But again, today, we could see him a bit more here. This run-in, a rider who can, put up a good sprint and is certainly capable of, making a very good place here. But yesterday's run-in, of course, again, there was going to be major difficult for him to get over the climb. So I think today we should see him, hovering around there on the last 10 kilometres, depending on how his form is as well. If you're a sprinter and you're off form a bit, well, then it's always difficult to stay up front and to be able to produce a really good sprint. If you're just a fraction, 2-3% off your best, it's always going to be difficult to get a top 5 placing here.
Well, this man's still plugging away, and rightly so. Now all he can do is to see how long it's going to take before everybody reaches him. Now, wouldn't it be a coup if somebody went off and did this one day and ended up winning just by riding off into the distance? It has been done in the past, but I don't think it's going to happen for Lopez Gil today. Running into the outskirts of Puertollano now, and it is an industrial centre, not the most lovely of venues. This is the older part on the way out, but it's a big grid patterned town full of petrochemical works mainly. I think Repsol have got one of their biggest factories here, or refineries, if that's the way of putting it. A little bit further on we'll see a lot of that coming on. This is Almodóvar de Campo on the outskirts of Puertollano, and this man has done a very, very good job. He's been out for a long time as Lopez Gil. No real sign of any of the Spanish teams folding this year, which is quite interesting, Sean, because a couple of years ago when we had Operation Puerto knocking about, a lot of the Spanish teams went to the wall. A lot of riders were without a job. Many of them, I have to say, went to Portugal. I'm not sure all of them went to Portugal for the right reasons, but we had maybe 5 or 6 teams, smaller regional teams, that were lost in that big shake-up from Operation Puerto, and sponsors not liking it. Doesn't seem to be the same sort of problems now. The crowd's still absolutely adoring cycling here. They're adoring the efforts of Lopez Gil, and there doesn't seem to be any news that many of the Spanish teams are facing the axe this year.
No, certainly not. I don't think there's any of them facing the axe, and it's certainly the case where we see some of the smaller teams having problems continuing at that time when we had the Operation Puerto, and a number of them pull out. But the bigger teams, the Pro Tour teams, as we have had in the last number of years, we haven't had any of them with problems of pulling out of sponsorship. But of course it's a situation where we have with Crédit Agricole, where we have a Gerolsteiner. They've been a long time in the sport, and it was announced that they were going to pull out in or about this year, and it's been out there, and it's been hanging over the team bosses for the last year and a half at least, if not 2 years, and they have worked on it a lot, trying to find a new sponsor, but just could not take a new sponsor in to take over the sponsorship.
Going through the last of the intermediate sprints then, it was Lopez Gil taking the first place. One of the guys from Astana, I was just looking down on, an awful lot like Contador actually. I'm not sure it was though, going through to take extra points. There are seconds bonus available. The road they were coming through is called the Rue Agostini, where that particular sprint was, at the top of the hill. And Lopez Gil taking the 6 seconds and 4 points. And I confess I missed who it was from Astana taking the points after that. But and the seconds, of course, 4 seconds bonus to be had. But certainly the chase is now on from the rest of the peloton to track down, hunt down Lopez Gil. And it's still Quick Step and Lukugas on the front. Lamprey doing an awful lot of work. They've decided, right, that's our turn done. Let's let somebody else have a go. They are lurking, one on the far right-hand side of your shot, then 2 or 3 a bit further back, sandwiched just behind the riders from Jusco Telescadi. Paolo Bettini is up towards the front, alongside Daniele Bernardi, the overall leader in the general, well, the classification leader of the general classification, wearing the gold jersey with his lime green Liquigas shorts on. To his left-hand side, in the dark red with the white on the shoulders there and the black shorts, are the riders from Silence Lotto, protecting and pulling up Greg van Avermaet towards the front. We spoke to Hendrik Redont the other day, the director sportif, and he said Van Avermaet's in a very good position. He's a very aggressive rider. He's got a good sprint on him. I think he's a little outclassed, Sean, at the moment in terms of big sprinters, but he could certainly do something if he could get away from those guys, either in a smaller break or if Bonen and Bernardi were fighting it out as well. Oh dear. Well, there's been a bit of a tumble in the middle. It's riders from Rabobank, Cofidis, Ardila, yeah. Is it Ardila? I thought it might have been at first. On the right-hand side of your shot. On the left-hand side, the rider from Cofidis, who's just gone down, I think it might have been Duque, in fact. Bizarrely. Looks a lot like Leonardo Duque, who's hit the deck for Cofidis, and all being caught out there with 8 kilometers to go. Lopez Gil still ploughing on. He's maintained a very, very regular pace, much better, in fact, than Ortega yesterday, who was suffering on the hills. But it's been a little kinder to him, the terrain, at the moment, and somewhere in the middle of this peloton, a number of riders have gone down. I think Leonardo Duque was one of them, but we shall see in just a minute. 8 seconds only then, the gap between Lopez Gil and the rest of the peloton. His day is over. The former octopus fisherman from Malaga, known as Malagueta to his fans. There he is, has had a very long day, lots of exposure for Andalusia, Carasur, and good on him. Well done, sir.
And he will sleep well tonight.
I'm sure he will sleep well tonight, having feasted on a dish of freshly caught octopus.
And we can see here in the bunch, it's not really going at anywhere near full speed, and that is the danger and the crash we see a little bit earlier on. Certainly nervous times for a lot of riders, because if you if you're up there and it's not going at the right speed, you're certainly always a bit nervous, and you can feel the movement when there's a big group of riders and it's not going anywhere near 100%. You're always a little bit nervous, as we see Cunego there again caught up in the crash.
Nasty. Binion Fernandez is one of the riders who seems to have been caught. Dimitri Champion there, by the look of it, from the Bouygues Telecom squad. And a couple of riders from Lamprey. Is that Napolitano? No, it's not. Binion Fernandez has been riding for such a long time in the Vuelta of Spain. He always pops out. He's been with Cofidis for quite a while now. And a number of riders caught out, including Damiano Cunego. Now, it's amazing. He's been caught on the deck several times this year. And you have to wonder, Julien Loubert from AG2R Le Mondial was also down there. This is the sprint. Marco Mazzano it was taking second. Alberto Contador it was. We looked up very briefly, saw Contador. Ooh, after bonus seconds. Interesting, Sean. That is very interesting.
Yeah, it certainly is, and you know, it's probably that they were just riding along, and you know, Bernassi not going for it. I think Contador just see that and nipped in there and took a few valuable seconds, and that's always you know, something you have to be careful with as a leader. And you know, Sastre and the other ones who are the big favourites, they, you know, they'll be get a little bit nervous at that, and I think they will be, you know, taking more attention the days to come if we arrive in the same situation.
Yeah, very clever thinking by Alberto Contador. Started at 34 seconds down on the general classification. Gets another 2 seconds back. Maybe he fears Sastre, who's at 31 seconds overall, so he's got another 2 seconds back on him. Clever riding. Damiano Cunego once again, he's going to have to chase back. Lube is the rider behind him from AG2R. He's been on the deck several times this year as well. What is it with Damiano at the moment, Sean? He doesn't seem to be able to stay upright sometimes.
Well, yes, he seemed to, you know, having a really difficult one in the Tour. Of course, it was you know, a very poor one for him. Crash-wise, he seemed to be getting caught up a lot of the times, and had a major one towards the end of the Tour. And sometimes, as a rider, you know, you can be a very good bike handler, and you just find yourself in the wrong place at the wrong time at you know, a number of times, and it's just you get a run of bad luck.
Yeah, he certainly had a run of bad luck. There's no doubt about that. Now the Quick-Step boys really pulling it together with 4 kilometers to go. It is now Harry Flatters, as they say, or will be very shortly. Liquigas lurking behind it. Maybe they'll learn their lesson this time, Sean. Or maybe they'll let Quick-Step do the work and let Bernardi sit in the wheel of Tom Bonen. That's probably the way around. He will have preferred it.
Yes, well, certainly I think they will be much more aware to the Quick-Step and Bonen today, and they're not going to really, you know, take up this one too early. We can see it's the Quick-Steps that are having to do it at the moment.
It is, and 1, 2, 3, 4 back in the lime green train is Daniele Bernardi in the gold jersey of overall leader. It's Quick-Step doing the work on the front at the moment. Looking behind now to see where everybody is. You can see Paolo Bettini, the world champion, is in here as well. 1, 2, 3, 4 back at the moment. On the left-hand side, it's Roche and Sebastian Ino of the Crédit Agricole squad. This is the nasty turn, as Sean's just pointing it out frantically in the book. This is the 180-degree turn. Nasty road surface, slowing right down. Good stuff. They've just had to make sure that they can get around there. Is that Roche on the front? No. Looking back, it's still Quick-Step. Oh my word, now what's happened? Is there another crash? There is another crash, and it just was going to happen, wasn't it? We said it was a very difficult time. I thought the cars, half the cars going through there as well. That looks like one of the Euskaltel boys who's on the deck. Andalusia Carasur are having a problem, and the Jacobo Galicia squad, I think, got 2 or 3 riders, or having a rider down as well. But back up at the front. It's all strung out now for the sprint. It's going to be Bernardi facing up to Tom Bonen. You could see Eric Zabel is just lurking in there with Tossato hitting the front and beginning to pull it along now. We're in the closing stages of stage 4 in the Vuelta a España. The road surface is not absolutely brilliant. It's a little bit more tricky than the last couple of days with 2 kilometers to go. It's all lined out now. It is Liquigas and Quick-Step, and anybody else who's in there is in there by the fact that everybody else is working. You can see Bernardi is sitting behind Bonen at the moment. He is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 back in the gold jersey. There is he. There is right in front of your face on this camera shot. Bettini still sitting in here with Tossato absolutely burying himself. Flicks the arm, looks around. There's nobody there except for Liquigas riders. They're keeping the pace exceptionally high as they come into the last kilometer. Now, I did wonder who the Gerolsteiner rider was, and it's Stefan Schumacher who is down. and Leonardo Duque this time is involved in a crash. There he is from Cofidis, standing next to Schumacher, and they are not happy people. 1 kilometer to go then for the top boys. It's going to come down to those two. Coldo Fernandez is the rider from Euskaltel-Euskadi who's up in this top flight group. But it's Liquid Gas now being forced to take up the run. Where is Daniele Bernati? Is he still sitting behind Bonin? He is. They flash past the camera, which moves off. Now we get the overhead shot. Bonin is third in line. Bernati is fourth. Then Zabel fifth. Then Napolitano is sixth. Coming into this final run in now, it's Bettini doing the work at the front. The world champion is doing the lead out for Tom Bonin, who's lying 1, 2, 3 back. Well, Bettini is going for it. Bonin's even further back, in fact. Bonin is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 back behind Napolitano. The gold jersey of Daniele Bernati is reluctant to do any work at the moment. He's coming out from behind. Quick step now. This is the final little corner to come in. And Bonin is going to come around the outside and then switches to the inside. Bettini's peeled off and Bernati's got the better line. Daniele Bernati takes it. Bonin misses out. And I think Coldo Fernandez from the Euskaltel-Euskadi squad takes third spot. Bad positioning in the end by Tom Bonin, and he had to switch from the outside to the inside, and Bernati gets it, and Bonin isn't happy.
No, certainly not. And yes, I think Bettini leading out there, but Bonin just too far off. He was in 5th or 6th position, and you know, a mistake by Bonin first of all, but the teammates also, they should give a little glance over their shoulder and see where Bonin is sitting, because they really did a good job, but you know, Bonin in 5th position, it was just that bit too far off to contest really for the win.
It certainly was, and a whole groups of riders now straggling in because they're involved in that crash towards the end. And of course, once it was very, very tight around that 180-degree bend at 3 kilometers to go. And once they were involved in that, the cars were streaming through for the rest of the peloton, and no way back from there. And Stefan Schumacher and Leonardo Duque, two of the riders, really having a problem, crashing and having nobody to come and support them. Very difficult stuff. Robert Gesink coming over the line now, 1:15 back. That was bad news for Schumacher and Duque, caught out.
Yes, well, of course, you know, just get caught up in the sprint. But again, for Duque, Schumacher, of course, Duque missing out a chance at the sprint here, but not a general classement man. So, you know, it's not a huge disaster for him. But certainly for Cunego, he was behind a bit earlier on, got caught up in that crash, and certainly, you know, further out in the 3 kilometers, and he was held up by the cars, and he is certainly going to lose time. But the other crash, maybe within that 3 kilometer mark, so they will be given the same time as the winner of the day.
They will, but just annoying for them, I think. Daniele Bernati taking the victory then ahead of Tom Bonin, and the Euskaltel-Euskadi rider Coldo Fernandez taking third. Here's Bonin. He had to go a long way around. Daniele Napolitano in the end just sitting up way off the mark, and still a good sprint by Daniele Bernati in the right place at the right time, but a not very happy Bonin second. So it's one apiece then for the big two sprinters here in the Vuelta a España. Daniele Bernati taking stage 4 ahead of Tom Bonin. He gets the extra seconds as well, 20 seconds bonus, and he will remain in that gold leaders jersey for another day and take it into the time trial tomorrow. There we are. There's confirmation of Bernati as the winner. 42-kilometer time trial tomorrow through Ciudad Real. 42.5 kilometers, in fact. Well, maybe Stefan Schumacher can make a comeback, having won 2 in the Tour de France this year. Well, from Sean and I hope you've enjoyed today. It's been a ball, actually. And we'll see you tomorrow for the time trial. Bye for now.